I'm Tyler Christensen with Nationwide Insurance, and today I'm conducting this interview on behalf of the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation. Today I have the privilege of interviewing Mike Mitchell, Area President of RPS Charlotte. And Mike has been with RPS since 2006. He began with RPS as a summer intern after graduating from Appalachian State with a degree in risk management. And of course, like all of us, he has a passion for trucking and really couldn't imagine being in any other segment in our industry. So welcome, Mike. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Tyler. And kudos for you for getting Appalachian State. A lot of people like to say Appalachian State. So big points for getting that right there.
I have been one of those people in the past. So, all right. Well, hey, Mike, we're welcome. We're really glad to have the opportunity to talk to you and learn a little bit more about you today, your journey. And then, the big piece of this interview is we want to know more about how MCIEF has contributed to your overall career in this transportation industry.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, so we're going to jump in. This is a fun question. I always like to ask it, but what keeps you up at night about trucking insurance?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of where do you start? Where do you begin? I think the big thing for me is there's just so many things that our truckers have to face every day. More regulations. There's talk about, maybe increased limits, which how does that change the dynamic for them and their ability to afford things? You have fuel costs, freight rates, fortunately are healthy right now, and increases in insurance. My big concern is I just want to make sure that our truckers have a healthy economy to keep sustaining and being relevant. There's periods of time that we've all seen where some of the top truckers are dropping off or are closing their doors. Fortunately, right now, things are fairly healthy for them all.
Yeah, certainly. I think this is, I hear what you're saying. And my next question was about your opinion on some of the recent verdicts we've been seeing. We recently saw a $1 billion verdict. And, that's one thing that's always concerning for me from a company perspective is how's that going to change insurance requirements, how it's going to affect us in our payouts. So what effect do you actually see that having, in the near future and down the road?
I think it's still too early to see or say. I think a lot still has to play out. But these numbers just kind of keep on getting bigger and bigger. It's almost kind of like all-star athletes. These contracts just keep getting bigger and bigger. Unfortunately, I think they'll continue to get bigger. What effect though on the industry? I'm not sure yet. It's certainly not been trending the right way for the cost of insurance. I'm hoping this $1 billion case gets settled for less in some form or fashion, but I think it's still too early to say because right now policy limits show one thing, and honestly there's not a lot of trucking firms that would have that much in assets to really pay out. So I don't know if that $1 billion verdict really means a whole lot in the end.
Right. All right. So big topic. It's been a big topic for quite a few years now, but as we see things changing and continue to talk about autonomous vehicles, in your opinion, how do you see that changing, what we do when we're looking at current trucking risk, man-driven risks, looking at it from a true commercial auto perspective? Do you see it still being a commercial auto coverage that commercial auto underwriters are going to have to handle, or do you see that transitioning to something more like professional?
Yeah, I think it could be a combination of both. I think the insurance carriers that currently insure trucks, I think they're going to have to adjust and adapt and find ways to cover more autonomous trucks. I think the aspects of having drivers in there, that's going to be something we're going to have for a while. I don't know that we're going to see widespread trucks without drivers in there anytime soon. But trucks are going to continue to become more automated in certain stages. But I think we've got a little bit of time until we get to that stage 5. But I do think the carriers that currently insure drivers, that's what they like to say, we insure drivers. I think they're going to have to adjust and adapt to stay relevant because I think that the business is going to change. And I think they're going to have to change with it. I think professional, they're going to be somewhat at an advantage because they see this type of stuff, but I think commercial auto carriers can still cover this. I think they're just going to have to adjust and adapt.
Yeah, I agree. I see it as somewhat of a blend, and
Yep.
obviously it's a substantial uptick in technology, and As carriers like ourselves continue to push telematics and continue to push technology out into the trucking risks that we insure, there's huge benefits to that. So I don't think it's going to become as scary as everybody thinks it is.
Agree.
But I think it's definitely something we need to continue talking about and preparing for.
Yes, I agree.
All right. What's the craziest claim you have ever dealt with in your career?
I was just talking to a retailer about this last week, actually. It's hard to say. We've all seen something. I probably could throw something out there that really doesn't seem so crazy. I think the thing with claims that I guess I'm going to take it a little bit different direction. I would say something that I always appreciated and saw when it came to claims. There's coverage out there. One of the carriers we represent will provide coverage for a truck driver's family. If he gets in an accident or something happens to him, they will fly the family out to be with him, or they'll cover some expenses for them. And I always thought that was just the right thing to do. These drivers are out there on the road, and for them not to have someone of kin there to help them out, I always thought that coverage was great. That's something we don't see on all policies. I always thought that coverage was just great to be able to cover that.
Oh, it is. I think that's the perfect example to highlight that it's not always just about price.
Exactly.
So tell me in 2 sentences a little bit about Tommy Ruke.
Yeah, good. I could go with a witty response, which would typically be my go-to. Tommy's Tommy. I don't know if you can really. That's a hard question to answer, but I was introduced to Tommy back when I was a summer intern, and just was able to participate in a class that he was teaching. Just his ability to relate to everybody within kind of the food chain of transportation insurance, whether it's the retailer, the insured, the carrier, the wholesaler. He can really relate, but just his knowledge and expertise has just been so valuable. That's way more than 2 sentences, but I'd sum it up as Tommy's Tommy, but he's just been so passionate about the industry, and that's been contagious to the rest of us.
Yeah, it has. I had a similar experience. I was introduced to Tommy years ago, and fortunately, being in Scottsdale, that was one of the hubs of where we conducted MCIEF classes at the time, and he's definitely been the face for MCIEF and the TRS designation. And I think that'll help us transition to the next question as to, how did you learn about MCIEF? I know you just stated that it was as a summer intern, but was that through contacts at RPS, or was that something you were aware of that was pushed at Appalachia?
So it was something within RPS. Jimmy Profit, who's long-time leader of RPS Transportation, retired last year, but he's always been a big advocate of being a student of the industry. Whatever you are in, whether it's professional lines or transportation, you name it, be a student of the industry. And we really came together as an RPS team and said MCIEF really is probably the best place to get the most focused, really education on what we do. There's good designations out there, CPCU, CIC, but there's nothing that really provides the focus on transportation that MCIEF does. So it's something that was encouraged, and we encourage our folks to continue to tap into it.
I assume you didn't, but when you started with RPS, did you already have an idea that you wanted to go into the trucking side and commercial auto lines of business, or were you kind of open to all lines at that point?
It's a good question. So I had an internship prior to RPS that was probably more general on the wholesale side, and then had the opportunity to intern with RPS and the Charlotte office that I'm a part of. All we do is transportation. And that summer, I just fell in love with it. At the time you're a summer intern, you're open for anything. Anybody that's willing to hire you for the summer, you're going to take it. But had that opportunity and just fell in love with transportation that summer. It just something that came easy to me, and really felt like the opportunity was there for everybody as well.
Now, as part of the risk management program, was transportation a line of business that was actually covered, or was it still P&C focused?
It's very much P&C focused, but I actually stay pretty involved with Appalachian State and the risk management program. So certainly try and give my fair sight or insight on transportation, and have had the opportunities to go up there and help out with classes and share some information about transportation insurance.
That's good. Yeah, I'd love to see how we could bring MCIEF into that organization. I know just for myself, the peers that I've had that have graduated with risk management degrees have also shared that, this isn't the line of business that's ultimately covered, but it's a really important line of business to learn about for new or existing underwriters in the industry. All right. So talking about Appalachian, at that point in time, I guess if you had to think back and put on your college hat, or even 5 years ago, what's one thing about trucking insurance you wish you had known at that point in time?
Oh wow, yeah, it's very volatile. It's not a it's not it can go quick. It can change very quick on you. And that was evident. So I've been in the industry since 2006, and it's changed a lot over the years. But even last year, we saw when COVID came, everything shut down, and it went from doom and gloom. And then by June, it was just a thriving industry. I mean, that was so quick. I don't know that I've ever seen such a turnaround. Just how volatile it is. It can be very good, and it can be very profitable, and all of a sudden it can be very unprofitable if you're not careful. So it keeps you on your toes, but that's the fun part of it.
As a wholesaler, what type of requests were you receiving from your insureds, or accommodations that you were having to reach out to carriers to ultimately comply with during the COVID time?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that is always a sticking point is covering all the equipment that the insured owns or operates. And typically a lot of insurance carriers are not willing to take vehicles off if because of the filings and that exposure, which is a legitimate exposure. And we found a lot of insurers that had to just park their trucks because there was nothing that they could ship. And I know groceries were still moving, but there was only so many trucks that could haul groceries that were needed. Many of our clients that hauled autos from the manufacturers to dealers, they were completely stopped. But we saw a lot of the carriers step up and help our clients, help our insureds, save that money and be able to stay relevant and survive the pandemic to come back and thrive. But that was probably the most common thing of looking for help and an exception to, take these trucks off the schedule, even though they were still owned.
Yeah. Yeah. The truck parking was certainly something that we saw the most of. What is something that you feel MCIEF could do to really enhance the organization? What's something that you feel, the newer, younger employers that you're hiring could benefit from as we try to provide more benefits from this type of education foundation?
Yeah, I think it's something. We've got a lot of younger talent coming into the industry and trying to help recruit those to the transportation side. Whether it's on the carrier side, the wholesale, or the retail, letting them know, trying to be, somewhat of an advocate or a recruiting tool to bring in that new talent, because it's going to be needed. And we've already seen in the last year or two a lot of longtime people, even board members of the foundation here that have retired, some very key members, and so that's going to continue. And I think the organization can do work towards trying to bring that together and maybe have events where it's focused at the upcoming generation.
Yeah, I love that. Piece of advice that I think I would give to any viewer, especially young viewers that don't know much about MCIEF, is get involved. You can learn so much, not only from this organization, but many others, whether it be the retail side, the wholesale side, the carrier side, or even if you're just a trucker yourself, get involved. We have our resources out there that'll be shared in the comments of this video. But I'll leave Mike with the last words for today's discussion. Any words of advice that you would like to provide, Mike?
Just learn as much as you can, and try not to say no to things. Any opportunities that come across your desk, try and take it on. There's going to be some challenges, but try and find a way. But continue to be a student of the industry, and the organization MCIEF is just phenomenal and on providing these opportunities. You're not going to find a better opportunity out there to stay abreast of the current challenges in the industry.
Yeah, TRS is one of the very limited designations designed for our industry. That's for sure.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Hey, I appreciate you joining us. We hope to see you here in the near future as things start loosening up a little bit and we get back to the conferences and get out to see our agents. But take care, and appreciate you sitting down with us today.
Thanks, Tyler.